Welcome, everybody. On today's show, I'm talking with Irvine Ondrey Engineering. And this company, these people in this company make roller coaster or ride programs. So this has always been a fun topic for me. I have a very heavy controls background. I'm self-taught most of it. And so working on rides has been unique for me because a lot of people say, well, what do you do if you come across this problem or that problem? And realistically, as a controls person at the park level, I can only troubleshoot stuff. I can't really get in and make any changes. So for that, the programs have always been a locked black box for me. But these people here actually build the box that the program works in. So I have a lot of questions for them. So let's get into that.
Now get ready. Here we go.
So you got Ann Irvine, Brian Ondrey, and then Brian Pastor.
Yes.
So, Ann, what do you do?
I am the CEO and the marketing manager of the company. Our story is kind of crazy and long. I don't even know if you have time to go into it with how much went on. But I have a marketing degree. I have always had an interest in computer and electrical systems since I was a kid. It's kind of funny how that worked out. And I knew when I was 14 that I wanted to go into the amusement industry. I had no idea it was going to be this. I didn't know I was going to end up owning my own company in it. But Brian and I actually known each other for many, many years, an enthusiast group. And he got into controls in 98 or 97?
98.
98, yeah.
Yes.
Working with B&M as their main programmer. And I started, and also with GCI, and I started working with him and realized, this was back in 2001, that I really loved what he did. And it kind of changed my whole life's progression of what I wanted to do. And I worked with him for many years. And finally, we went off on our own in 2012. I have to start actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's been a while. And I've actually...
Blurs together.
Right,
sometimes.
right. So I've owned businesses before, so I knew the process. But he took entrepreneurial courses too to learn what he needed to do. And in the space of 2 months, we got the business going after GCI got a hold of us and said, we want you to do our rides coming up, which were Gold Striker and White Lightning. And we're going to wait for you to start your own company. So in 2 months, we got it rolling.
Yeah, no pressure or nothing like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
Right.
basically, I had up the business on the people side, and the guys are the awesome, amazing engineers. And I love doing social stuff too. That's one of my absolute favorite things in the world. But I'm the spokesperson. I'm the one that likes to speak up about what we're doing because I love what we do. I love the amusement industry. I love Cedar Point. Like I could go on and on and on. Just a little bit. I could go on and on about it, but just a little tidbit of what we do. Yeah.
Just yep. No, we love it. Ann takes care of the business stuff, so leaves us clear for the engineering. Makes life a lot easier.
We also have a new employee. His name is Donnie, and he's awesome. And he's just started out, so he doesn't have all the stories yet, but we're super happy to have him on the team. He's actually worked with us as an intern for many years. Him and I are really good friends. He's very dedicated to the amusement industry. And so we have this really cool team going right now. And I also work with Chris Roberry, who produced the Arrow documentary. He works with us. Then my best friend from high school works with us. And then also have one of my best friends from our coaster enthusiast group working with us as non-engineering things, but really super important roles on the business side. So we have a really fun team going. We really, really do.
Well, I think you can mention Bill's name at least.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill Buckley and Jeff Talati are our other two employees, and everybody's important. Everybody's important. Everybody does an amazing job, and they're super important in our company. There's not like a hierarchy. I feel like everybody's important.
No, we all yell at each other.
Yeah. Yeah, company chat's pretty interesting most of the time.
Yes. No, we just, as she said, I'm thrilled with the team that we have right now. With our core engineering group, I think we needed at least 3 people. BP and I were hitting the point that we were going to start pulling out hair. I've already started a little while back.
right
See
about
me
here.
from the back behind. Yeah, BP's just beginning his bald
Mhm.
spot.
What about that?
So yeah, after all that, we said, you know what? Yes, we need Donnie on board, and glad to have him, and glad to have our other guys too. They fill in holes that, you know, when you get into running a business, everyone's like, oh, you should start a business. Oh yeah. Do you understand what goes into actually owning a business? Because maybe you wouldn't be saying that so flippantly.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
yes, there is a lot, and we need everyone from our team, especially on the business sides. Because I'm an engineer, I don't do this business stuff. I just make stuff work. So yeah, I'm glad to have our team as we have it.
You know, like I said, we have a lot of fun. We're always laughing, always laughing. I always say to Brian, what we do is so serious that I feel like when we're not in that serious mode, we have to be as funny as we possibly can be to balance out the stress. So we have a good time.
Yeah, I'd say that's all I got.
Mhm.
Okay.
What about you, BP? Talk about your awesome past.
Sure.
Fantastic.
I went to college actually for lighting design. I was a theatrical lighting designer. I was into the live entertainment aspect of live entertainment when I was going to college. But I always had a passion for theme parks and going to amusement parks. Excuse me. I grew up going to Dorney Park all the time, and Great Adventure and Hershey Park, and the occasional trip to Disney World. So I spent my first 10 years out of college actually working for Walt Disney World. I went straight there out of college, did all sorts of various things from attractions and merchandise and live entertainment. And attractions is really, really where I kind of grew my love for rides. And I realized I really wanted to do this ride thing more and more. And after my 10 years at Disney, I realized I kind of wanted a different change of pace. Working in a theme park is great, but you end up working every holiday and weekends and long hours. And after 10 years of working, every holiday, I was like, okay, I kind of want something a little bit better, a little bit more advanced now. And several of my friends had gone out to Vegas and were working on various Cirque du Soleil shows doing automation. So one of my good friends said, hey, why don't you come out here to Vegas? There's plenty of automation spots opening or that are open. Your background would be great because you used to do show control stuff for several live shows. And I said, yep, let's go. So me and the wife packed up, moved to Vegas, where I was an automation technician with Cirque du Soleil at the Ka show at MGM Grand. Which was awesome because if you want to do automation for a show, that's the show to do it. I don't know if you know anything about it, but
I've seen some behind the scenes stuff on that, and like, oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we did that for 8 years. And after those 8 years, I was like, I really miss the theme park stuff, but I don't want to go back and work in the parks. I want, I'm getting, I was doing a lot of programming while I was there in Vegas. So I was like, I really want to combine these two now. I know how to program. I like roller coasters. I like rides. I want to program rides. So who is doing this? I knew of Irvine Ondrey because I knew of the company that he had worked for before. And I did the thing that most sane people would do when you want a job with their company is you Facebook stalk them. So I Facebook stalked Brian and found out he had just started his own company. And so I wrote to him. I said, hey, this is me. This is what I do. I want to work with you because this is what I want to do. I expected nothing to come back. And then like a day later, I got this like 3-page letter back from Anne explaining everything and what the company is and where, all this other stuff. And it just, I was totally floored by the response. I didn't expect it at all because I had emailed other companies before, and you're lucky if you get more than like a 3-letter or 3-word response back from someone.
Yeah.
But to get that long email from Ann saying, with genuine interest in and me and them and them and me over the next year and a half of communicating with them and meeting them and doing a job shadow with them, and they finally were smart enough to hire me. And that was back in 2016.
When you wake up and you find BP standing over you over your bed, you figure it's either to hire him or call the cops. So we went with hire him.
You do what you need to have. You do what you have to do, Ryan. You just do it. Okay.
All's fair in love, war in the amusement industry.
Right. So that was back in 2016. I started with the company back in 2016, and my first gig was with Brian on a ride at Dollywood. So that was fun. And
Nice.
so now we're on 8 years now. Wow, 8 years with the
pretty
company.
good.
Crazy. It's really crazy how
Mhm.
time has just flown.
It sure
Like,
has.
Got to make it to 10 years, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now it's just how long we've been going. But that's good.
Yeah.
That's
14
good.
now.
Yeah.
12.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like a lot. That sounds like a good environment to work in, which is great. And it sounds like you all got your return on investment figured out. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the questions I did have looking through things, I went to the website and looked around. It's a nice website, nice design there.
Thank you, Jeff, for that one.
Yeah, explains a lot about what's going on. So the Irvine Ondrey, how did we decide what name went first?
Oh, this is a real simple one. It's all marketing. I told Brian that we needed to come up with a name that had an acronym. It was best if the acronym was 3 letters. Sometimes 4 is okay, but 3 is best. And we basically went back and forth with what order went best. And if you think of OIE versus IOE, which one flows off the tongue better?
I mean, I like IOE just because it's got IO to start with.
There you go.
That was part of the reason, and the other reason is OI Engineering just didn't kind of sound so. So yeah, we became IOE.
All right.
OI Engineering. So
looking at your website, it looks like you guys do pretty much everything under the sun that has to deal with controls. I know you're 100% pointed at rides and amusement and everything, but listen to Brian Pastors talking about it's like, do you guys also do stuff from time to time just outside of the amusement industry, like some basic stuff? I'm assuming there's plenty of little odds and ends of automation that people just need done.
Well, we got a big one right now because we're working with NASA on the Artemis program. So that's just a little tiny project. You want to talk about that a little bit, Brian?
yeah, we're actually we got drawn into this one because of our amusement industry links. And there's the cat knocking something over.
Of course.
And because of that, NASA had gone out and looked for some amusement industry people because they wanted to do an escape system for their astronauts. And the escape system that they came up with is really a ride more than anything else. It's a gondola that goes down a cable, and we control magnetic braking on the wheels of the gondola as it goes down. We have a system built on board, battery powered, and everything fully redundant that controls 2 actuators that control the magnetic braking on the wheels as it goes down. So we have a braking profile. We want it to go fast in the beginning and then slow up really quick towards the end, just to get the astronauts out of there as quickly as possible. So yeah, we got brought into that, and so far it's been a phenomenal project to be a part of.
It was truly moving to be on the site and arriving for the first time. And for me, going to rides is amazing. It's a moving experience, and I love it. But there's definitely a step of like, wow, this is iconic.
Yeah.
When we showed up at the launch site of, wow, I can't believe I'm here. And the whole experience, when I went home after my first day, I did not eat dinner. I went right to bed because I just felt like it was such an emotional thing to be right there where so much history was made. So did not expect that coming when we started the business, but it's been awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we always kind of keep an ear to the ground on it. We're definitely willing to expand. I think, for any business, it's good to have multiple industries just in case. So
Sure.
yeah, we're always kind of keeping an eye out there. We've done a few little industrial jobs, and you never know.
But anything in a park is fair game.
Yeah.
Call us up.
Yeah.
It's in the park. We'd love to look at it.
The interesting thing about the NASA project, though, is to me is it's we're spending so much time, and Brian and Ann have been down there and working really hard on it. But you hope it's something that no one ever has to ride, which is completely opposite from
Big time.
every other, project that we've worked on. We want people to be on it. We want to see their reaction.
Right.
And we want to see them yelling and screaming. This is a project that we hope they never, ever have to use. But it's just interesting difference between the two projects.
Yeah, there's a different vibe to it because of that, for sure.
Well, I'm thinking it's going to be the rarest ride credit in the world.
Yeah.
Good luck on that
We
one.
can't even get
Yeah,
it.
we can't even get on. And I am literally, I have said I am at the top of the list for if they do allow a rider. I've said, look, I did the code. I'm not going to trust anyone else on it till I've gotten on it. At least that's a great excuse that I came up with. And that's what I'm sticking to right now. But yeah, it's one of those cases of it may never get used by a human being, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's actually what we hope for.
That is what you hope for in that scenario. If not, you can get one of those white morph suits that doesn't have, just put it on over your body and write the word dummy on it and sit there really close to it with your hands posed and just like hope they're like, all right, we got to test this week. Yep. Okay. Well, load the dummy in.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The enthusiast side of us never dies. I mean, the second we can get on something, we're getting on it. We're already edging toward the ride. It's okay. It's running now. We're like all
Right.
edging toward it.
Well,
We have to make sure we get on it.
From the ride side, this is a 300+ foot drop on a cable car, going full speed for the first half of it.
Wow.
So, yeah, if that sounds like fun, NASA has this great new ride. You'll have to get in touch with them for riding. I think there's a small process to get to that point, but yes, it's a heck of a ride.
Well, if I could inject my own 2 cents in there, you've already engineered it. It's already done. So what's it matter if they just go to an alternate site somewhere and put up like 3 more of them? One tower in the center, you could splay the cables out 3 or 4 different ways. I mean, there you go. It's some alternate income for them too. There you go. Charge $50 a
Put an
ride.
escape room. Put an escape room before it. And that's the reward, is to get on and go out.
The 300-foot high escape room.
Yeah, I know.
That works.
BP would love that. So
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. When a company approaches you guys for a project, at what point in time do they do that? I mean, when they say, hey, we have this, we need a control system on this ride or whatever it might be, have the prints already been made and the thing is already designed and laid out, and you're pretty much just given pieces of a puzzle and saying, all right, this is what you have to deal with and do it? Or do they have a lot of blank space on there to say, well, this is what we want, and then is there a back and forth between the company and the manufacturer saying, oh, this is what we want, what do you guys need back from us? Because in my mind, I go to, well, all the proximity sensors laid out all over the track. And it's like, well, that's good, but I don't think the manufacturer put all those there. They needed the controls company to say, well, we need 10 proxes along that sensor, something like that. I'm saying like a dive coaster, and some of them have just like 2 proximity sensors as the train goes over the drop, and some of them have 10, 15, and it looks like they're watching it every 6 inches. And people have asked me, say, well, why are there so many proximity sensors on there? And best response is like, they really want to know where the train is. Like that's all I could think of. But what's the feedback from that on your end?
You're kind of right on both sides. When the manufacturers come to us, they have a basic design done already. What we see is the beginning of the brake run to the top of the lift, and then any block brakes that might be in the system. They have calculated already what size motors and how many brakes they need, because they've got all that mechanical information far more than we do. Then comes the second part, where we generally do all the placement of the sensors, all the locations for that, and we're just looking at functionality to whether you need speed sensors, train detection, where do you need it? How many do you need? And that's purely dependent on the functions of the ride.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, typically we don't know the layouts of the ride when we first start working on them. We just get a drawing of where the brakes are, the lift hill, the size of the motors, how many brakes. And from there, we design the system, where the proxies are going to go, how many, and that type of stuff. A lot of times we don't know the name of the ride. We'll find out the name of the ride when it gets announced, like everyone else. Like when I worked on Twisted Timbers, I didn't know what it was called until the announcement came out, and I didn't know what the layout was until they showed the animation, and that's when I learned out what it was going to be called. Until then, it's RMC Coaster at King's Dominion.
There you go.
Yeah, and I have, and it's just as exciting for us as it is for everyone else when they see the layouts and everything come out. We know what the brake run's going to look like and how many brakes there's going to be there, but that's all we know. We really don't get that information ahead of time.
When those companies come to you and they say, we need a control system for this, do they have a rough outline of the control system they want? Do they know, like, we know we need screens to go through automatic and manual, and we need a whole nother screen. We want 2 panels for transfer, or is that something that's kind of left up to you to say, we should really do this? I mean, how do you do the housekeeping on something like that? It seems like a very complex problem.
There's a lot of dialogue between us and the manufacturer and the end client, being the park. We will have like a basic system design already for a majority of our coasters, and we use that to our advantage, because if parks have more than one of our rides, they know where they're going to be laid out similarly. But there are some parks that don't care and leave all those decisions up to us. And then there are some parks that have very specific things on what they want and where they want them, how many operators it takes to dispatch the ride. We want these type of keys. We want these type of push buttons. And then there's other parks that are just like, hey, man, just make the thing run and teach us how to do it. And you get both. So when we get handed a project, there's always more conversation, a lot more conversation once we get those initial designs. And there's always back and forth and changes to design. And as things progress, the manufacturer might realize, oh, hey, we need an extra set of boosters over here, or, oh, we're going to eliminate a couple of these brakes and move them over here. So your design, has to change a little bit for that. But there's just always dialogue between us and the client and the manufacturer on what the end product is going to be.
I think it's cool when we work on our retrofits, especially me, because there's a people side of it where we love to talk to former ride operators, current ride operators, and park operations. So you hear a whole spectrum of what people like, dislike, random things that they absolutely got to keep that you would never know unless you ask questions. Certain things like, oh, there's a peculiarity in this one, but we like this. We want it to stay this way. Change this button, add this button. So we invite people to talk to us on our Facebook page and say, hey, if you work the ride, you have any thoughts on it, let us know, because you guys know that ride better than we do. And that's always the fun part to me. We've had several cases where I've gone back and forth with ride operators about, okay, this is really bad and this needs changed, or please keep this one thing that's really, really random, but we just really like it. I just really like retrofits a lot. I think it's really fun. It's kind of revisiting my past when we go back to coasters that I grew up with, or classic ones, or especially if it's the really classic ones, like Brian working on Jackrabbit at Kennywood. I mean, to me, it's really fun, and you never know what's going to happen in a sense, because everything's so different, and you get to bring new life to it. And it's just, I love doing the new rides, but I love hearing about retrofits too. But there's definitely a people side of it, doing the retrofits.
Yeah, that's interesting. While we're on the lines of retrofitting things, trim brakes. So a lot of times, I just thought of this one. A lot of times manufacturers, the old ones, old coasters out there, the trim brake is just that. It's like, well, they go out there and they put air pressure or whatever in it. They set it at the beginning of the day, and then they just let the ride loose, and then it is what it is. Newer stuff is more, it's typically time or speed driven. You ever get parks that want to keep the trim brake, but they say we even with new technology, we still just want it to We just want to do the old fashioned, just go out there, set the pressure like we used to, and let it run. We don't want any automation to it. You ever get something excluded from a project like that?
Actually, not usually. When it comes to a lot of the older systems, it's a lot more of an advantage to tie everything together. And it's like if they don't have to go out to the breaks every day and make an adjustment and have to calculate that on their own, and the system can do it for you, they're happy to have that. It's any work that we can take off of maintenance, I think they enjoy. So. Yeah, when it comes to any systems that were split up, maybe had something added later on, that's one of our goals with a retrofit, is to combine all that stuff all into a new system. So it's all put back together. Everything works in harmony.
For the trim brakes in particular, you guys have a preference whether you use speed or time or both?
It really depends. It depends on the location. It depends also on the function. One of the ways that I do like to use trim brakes is on a time basis, actually from the top of the lift. And then that way, you say, okay, simply after 20 seconds, you open that brake. And now if the train has gotten to that point faster than 20 seconds, it gets trimmed. If it gets there slower than 20 seconds, it doesn't get trimmed. And in a case like that, then it really goes off the time basis. However, if you're talking about multiple trims and it depends more on the speed, then we do a speed calculation and say, okay, it's this speed, we need 1 trim. It's that speed, and we need 2 trims. So yeah, it's a function of the ride dynamics and what they're looking for.
When it comes to controls, I saw on the website you guys work with Allen Bradley, Siemens, and then others. Obviously, you never want to close that door off to anything else. Do you have a preference if you were starting with a blank piece of paper? I know the company I work for always specified Allen Bradley for their equipment, but I mean, if someone comes up and it's a smaller and it's like, well, we don't care what you use, just use whatever you want to. You guys have a preference at all, or something that's maybe easier to program and get up and running?
Well, I would say Allen Bradley is our preference, mainly because the far majority of our rides are Allen Bradley. So it's more of a familiarity. It's starting with the same base. But as you said, it really depends on what the park wants. We can do other systems. Allen Bradley is just completely the manufacturer being used in the U.S. When you get to Europe, it's a bit more of a debate whether it's going to be Allen Bradley or Siemens. And over in the Asian countries, it's very similar to that too, where it's a little bit more of a debate between the two. But Allen Bradley, I think, has won that battle a little bit more, and we're just kind of following the trend.
Sensors used all over the ride, and they use every way, shape, and form, right? First of all, mechanical versus proximity, like a good old cam switch versus a proximity sensor.
Proximity. 100%.
You got it.
That's
Correct.
what I would go with every time too. Some people don't understand. They say, why would you, if you're using these cam switches, why would you go away from using that? And I'm like, because you don't want things touching the train as it flies by. I mean, that's the first little thing that gets flicked off on the side of the ride is the cam. Like, stop touching the train. Geez. Kind of a nerdy question. Most people won't get this. You have a preference PNP versus NPN style sensors? I mean, you can set the PLC up to do it either way, but
99.9% of the time it's going to be PNP.
Ding. Correct.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Yes.
You're
Going
gonna
for
win
the
a
big
prize.
bucks, folks.
No whammies, no whammies.
Stop.
To be honest, Ryan, I don't even know if the safety cards that we typically use for inputs handle NPN sensors. I would have to look that up. I don't know if they do. I think most of them are syncing.
Yeah, all the control stuff I've dealt with has been PNP.
Yeah.
and it makes sense to me. And then
Mhm.
all the computers, like everything computer driven games, anything you'd find around your house is all NPN, because it's, in my mind, it's backwards. And people
Yeah.
say, why wouldn't you use that? I'm like, because that circuit, if you short it, it turns on.
Yeah.
Like that's not a good thing.
Right.
If you
Not in our
short it, I want a
area.
fuse to blow, not the thing to turn on all of a sudden.
Correct.
Yeah. This one I was working on an Intamin water ride, and we were having trouble with the photo eyes down at the bottom. And this one particular ride used dark operate photo eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Mhm.
And the two, you have the light operate and dark operate. My train of thought is I prefer light operate photo eyes over dark operate, but is that a thing?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you 100%. And typically, we try to stay away from using photo eyes as much as humanly possible, because I'm sure you're well aware of the nuisance errors that photo eyes can cause on sunny days, or with birds, or with spiders that like to crawl in the little snoots and make little webs. But yeah, we typically try and stay away from them as much as possible. When we have to use them, like on a water ride, we typically like to use dual channel ones that are light and dark operate. So you just have that additional channel there to let you know what's going on. But yeah, if you only have a single channel, it would be light operate.
And the last one for that is optical versus ultrasonic. I don't know if you.
Yes.
Yes, which way?
I was wondering.
I would go with
The big
optical.
bucks
That's
here.
just me. That's
Your
just me.
answer
I would say
is?
we've only used, as far as I know, Brian, we've only used ultrasonic ones on one ride that I remember, and it's no longer operating. And it's not because of the ultrasonic sensors, but I would say optical.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would definitely go with optical, but there have been cases where ultrasonic, is just the choice to make. For collision avoidance was the particular case that we were dealing with in an open track area, and something like that, just like your cars, ultrasonic's going to work a little bit better.
Yep.
But again, a 99.9% of the time, we're going to do photoelectric.
When it comes to starting a project, I know you said you have kind of like your base program that you would use for the majority of stuff. How does that, like, if you're handed something that's, like a basic roller coaster, I would say, it's 2 trains. It's like, okay. But if you're handed something much more complex, maybe like a dark ride or something like that it could have 15 units moving around the track all at the same time. How do you start to organize that thought to build a program to start to handle all that stuff? That is just an insane amount of mind power, because I play with some basic logic games, and I have a hard time moving an elevator to the 4th floor.
Well, you got to think of it from a compartmentalized idea, where you're filling a very large block program with smaller blocks, and what you can do is you can take the logic and the concepts that you would use for like a 2-block system, and you're just multiplying that. You're creating additional subroutines for each block, but they often are doing the same thing. They've got the same setup, everything else like that. It's actually that consistency is what you want, because it's well tested already. It's you're not reinventing the wheel. So yeah, doing kind of a modular approach to programming, and we have specific add-on instructions that we have created over the years that we can kind of drop in places. That has really kind of made that process a lot easier. So for block systems, it's easy. The complex thing is when you get a new type of ride. Like one of the ones I always like to use as an example is a pendulum. That is not nearly as easy as you would think, because it's like, okay, great. I start by pushing it in one direction. How long do I push it? When do I change directions? And I'm supposed to go off of momentum, but then I have to know when I'm slowing down, change directions again. And sometimes we don't have all the sensors you would hope for. An encoder is nice, which, for everyone that's not familiar with an encoder, will count the exact number of rotations that a shaft makes. Whereas our prox sensors are just a simple on and off. So when you have a pendulum system and you only have proxes, that's complex. A lot more than people think. So it's sometimes the more complex rides on the surface look simpler, the flat rides, things like that. But when you really get into trying to think of it from a programming side, they can actually be some of the most complex rides we'll deal with.
Yeah.
Seen that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I got what I call my moment of zen from a Zamperla Hawk, which I was looking through the program, and there was a rung in there where they were doing the reversing of the drive to know when to reverse the drive. And for direction, they had a bit in there where the tag on the bit said, I can only reverse the direction I was going. And that's all it says. And I was just like, there's your moment of zen right there. What do we know about this world? It's like, I can only reverse the direction I was going.
Fortune cookie.
Yes.
Built in.
We get a little weird after many hours of programming, yes.
But I understand it. I especially after the tech came out and we were talking about it, and he says, yeah, what we do is we watch RPM and current. And we reach a minimum RPM with a maximum current, we change direction. And that's how we know when it's supposed to swap. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. That was pretty amazing. It's like, yeah, something you could do when you don't need the encoder. That one had a safety encoder on, had the like 2,500 pulses and 250 pulses, or 25,000 or something on it. It was pretty big. Watching the main motor up on top of the thing. But that was quite interesting. Yeah, I call that my moment of zen.
That's cool.
Yep, I like that.
On the newer controllers, newer to me, something like Allen Bradley safety logics or guard logics, they have their own internal fault logic. They know when the cards fault. They know when the processor faults. So the question is how much on top of that, how much of the programs that you build are spent developing fault diagnostic for the rest of the ride? I mean, because I've older programs, there was a lot just watching the processor and the I/O, making sure the I/O didn't stick on accidentally and the processor was still alive. So if a lot of that is being taken care of to some extent, how much fault do you add into the rest? How much time do you spend adding fault into the rest of the ride?
50 to 90% of the time.
Yeah. Are you talking more like watching the hardware, or like the PLC hardware, or like the ride hardware?
So,
or
for adding it into the ride hardware, like we instructed the brake to open, and then the pressure switch didn't drop out. So
yeah, 50 to 90% of that. Yeah, that's what Brian said. I mean, it's a large chunk. The most time you spend on site doing one single task is your error checking and fault checking, because it's the most important.
So talking about faults, when it comes to downtime, obviously fans don't want downtime on the ride because, it sucks to have a down ride. But I know it's unavoidable. But you can get nuisance errors and stuff like that. So once the ride is out of like a hypercare, once it's we've passed that time and the ride's it's been at the park now for a handful of months, does the park ever return back to you or the manufacturer, depending on which way you have to go through it first? They ever come back and say, it's working, but we want a couple of more items addressed, even though the hypercare period might have ended. for people that don't understand that, hypercare is basically once you turn a project over, you typically have some sort of period of where we're going to watch it afterwards before we officially say it's done. I'm not sure what your guys' stance is on hypercare at all, but that's my experience.
Yeah, we've never used that term before. I actually had asked BP what you meant by that. Really it's considered the warranty period.
Okay.
And there's also what we would call the babysitting period.
I was gonna say babysitting.
The babysitting period, where a lot of times we stay for opening days and always like media days. Most of the time there's people there, basically like to make sure, okay, what do you guys think, and keep the communication going. Whatever, and you know what? Sometimes just you release it into the wild and that's it. They're happy with it, and I can think of a couple of rides in particular that just. It's like almost we weren't there. There's just
we never touched them again.
We never heard anything, and I mean that's a good thing in a sense. That there's nothing they're unhappy with, but things will come up too where it's like maybe a year or two into operation, we want something a little different. Can you change this? Can you change that? So those things happen. Yeah,
it's normal.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at it as you're spending your time on site testing everything that could go wrong. That's so much of our jobs is thinking what could go wrong. It's the constant question you're asking yourself when you're doing a ride. And you're having to answer every single question of what could go wrong. But while you're doing that, and that's the majority of your focus, it still could mean that there's a minor change to operations once after they've worked with the ride a bit, and can you add these counters here? We want to count trains in this situation. We want to count people. We want to see a screen that shows us this. That's normal. That's that's one of those, as it breaks in, as people work with it, they might come up with things, and that's fine by us. It's totally understandable. It's like, look, this is your ride. We want you to be happy with it. So if there's little modifications we make after the fact to keep the client happier, sure, why not?
We actually had a park come back to us after they had seen what we had done at Steel Vengeance with not only the seat status screens, but how we designed them, because they're very creative. Mm-hmm. And the panel overlay on the operator panel was especially made for Vengeance. And they came to us and said, basically, hey, we have some of your rides. Can you do that for us? Can you do some custom panel work and do the design screens? And, oh, yeah, no problem. That's going to be really fun. So You never know. I mean, with what we do, you literally never know what kind of phone calls you're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
Never, which is kind of the fun part to me, because you might be like, wow, you'll never believe who called today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, they've got this email and it'll be something.
And where in the world too?
Yeah.
It's like
right.
People will be like, well, what's for next year? I'm like, I don't know. I'll have to see what the phone calls take me.
Yeah.
Right.
Like when we're on site we're like training maintenance people, the how to operate the ride and do the maintenance functions of the ride. I always tell them, I say, if you see something you want it to operate differently than the way it currently is right now, tell me right now while we're here, because I'm not the one that's going to have to operate or maintain this ride in a week when I leave. You are. So if you don't like it, or you would prefer to operate slightly differently, let's get it the way you want it, because like Brian said, we want you to be happy with it, and we're not going to be the ones having to transfer trains off and on every day. We're going to be at home or somewhere else. If you want it to run differently, tell us right now. We're right here.
Yeah.
So we make sure they're happy before we go. That way, there's no having to come back or remote in after we leave to take care of things, but it does happen.
So it's kind of an odd scenario. You're building a program for a ride that you didn't build. You yourself didn't build it. So essentially, it's like kind of like it's like a third-party vendor. So my question becomes like, all right, well, but let's say, like 10 years after the ride's been installed, it's a long time. Now we're looking more towards a retrofit than anything else. But if I know you guys did the control system, but we bought the ride from Vekoma. Like, is it okay to go back to you guys and say, hey, can we change some stuff on this ride, or do I need to does you guys let the manufacturer know? If you know, like, yeah, we worked on that project with Vekoma, would you let the manufacturer know that you're doing that? Or is this kind of like, you look at that like, we're in the retrofit category now. This is our project now. Is there a gray area or a defined area when it comes to that sort of stuff?
It depends.
Yeah.
That gets complex because you look at it as the ride is actually now owned by the park. There's a handover period when the ride is completed, and it officially becomes the park's ride. Because of that, the park can really do what they want. Now, that being said, we would prefer to work hand in hand with the manufacturer and say, that way you can ask specific questions. Why did you do this? What things should we do in what ways to make sure that we're doing this the way that that the engineers say it should be done. So we prefer the communication, but obviously there's some rides that the manufacturer no longer exists.
Right.
So then you're doing your best guess on things. You're kind of putting together the system from your own knowledge. And I would say, even when we work with manufacturers, we're doing 95% of it from our own knowledge. We know how this works, but if you can work hand in hand with them, it's better. But I mean, we have a project with a manufacturer right now, and that manufacturer has basically said, "Oh, you're fine. We're not going to worry about what you do."
Yeah, I would say 95% of the overhauls that we do now, those manufacturers aren't around anymore. I mean, CCI isn't around anymore. The companies that did control systems for old CCIs aren't doing control systems anymore. O.D. Hopkins isn't around anymore. They're not built, so a lot of the parks that the rides are over 20 years old. They own the rides. They can do whatever they want to with them, or the manufacturer isn't around anymore. So, and also the rides are older, so they're really not as complicated as some of the more up-to-date rides are. I mean, they were all most of them were relay logic, so it's not on or off or open brake, close brake. There's not a lot of fanciness going on with some of the older rides, so they're a little bit easier to do overhauls on. You're not dealing with servos or robot arms or anything like that. It's pretty simple stuff from the early 80s to the early 90s even.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of those. The first thing I really was like, oh my gosh, when I saw it, I remember I had gentleman by the name is Dan. I can't remember his last name, but he was from Dynamic Attraction, and he was in the park. They always, Dynamic Attraction came out once a year just to see if there was anything they could, like anything, any crazy ideas we had, anything we just needed done, a retrofit or just an upgrade or something like that. And he was showing me some of the video of the ride vehicles from the Harry Potter ride at like Universal, and I was just like, eyes were just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
is it Dan Hutchinson?
Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, we've
and then I
done
saw
some work with them in the past too.
Yeah, they were cool.
Yeah.
One of the most amazing videos I've seen. I'd love to see it again, but I don't know where it was. Is for that ride. It was the high-speed transfer tracks that they used, and I can't even remember it really clearly. I just remember coming away because he just showed me on his phone. He's like, "Hey, watch this," and I was like, it looked like something out of a Transformers movie. Like, and it was like. I was like, wow.
I think it's like 17 seconds or something for that track to switch. I have 17 seconds stuck on my head for some reason, but I want to say it's something like 17 seconds. And it's like boop boop, and the track flips, and then next vehicle moves on, then it flips back again. It's just like wow, because that ride doesn't stop if you're not familiar with it. It does not stop unless it has to. But the whole loading process and everything is constant, so they have to do everything when there's that 17-second window or whatever it is to pop the new vehicle on.
I just thought it was amazing because normal transfer systems, I'm used to seeing like a sliding component or, and that in a dark ride, like a rotating track.
Sure.
That has a just different piece on it. I've never seen it just completely deconstructed and rebuilt in a different direction. That was really interesting to see.
It's amazing what money can buy.
It is. Wow, that really was. At this point in the video, if you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe and give me some comments down there. Let me know if you got any fun stories to add on to these. And then let me know if you want to see something for topics in the future too. I'm always up for new stuff. I've got a list of things that I'm making, but sometimes somebody says something and I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that one real quick. That really sounds like fun. I do enjoy getting that information. You guys come up with a lot of good ideas for videos, so let me know if you got them. You can also email me at ryantherideMechanic@yahoo.com. Let's get back into the video. When you're putting a new ride together, when you're putting a new control system together, you have control over what you want to use to some extent. So my question is that how do you find the balance between adding enough proximity sensors to get the job done and then too many to where it starts like possibly creating downtime? It's like, well, yeah, you can put a sensor there, and if you use both channels, then when you move it away, you could just say, well, it's gone. And then or hear me out, or we could put 4 proximity sensors and 6 pin proxies underneath it, and then a photo eye across the middle.
I'm thinking of one ride that should remain nameless. Anyways.
Okay. The big thing that limits us is cost. We have to bid these projects, and we've got competition. So when you're looking at this stuff, you want to use your minimum amounts, and again, that's just kind of from experience. The places where you need just a single sensor as a feedback loop versus redundancy that you're going to want from block checks and things along those lines. There's no specific equation of how to do that. That's just a learned knowledge. It's backed by the engineering.
Good experience.
Yeah, Anne's right.
Been doing this a long time.
Yeah, I've been doing this now for over 25 years, so I've seen a few coasters at this point in time, and just from all that, I've learned where I want to have my sensors and why I want to have them. What's the absolute minimum I can use to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? So it really comes down to just that. There is some engineering that is involved, obviously. Where there's certain, you have to have feedback from every output device. You want to have some sort of input feedback. There we go. So you want to have that combination going, so you can check all of your output devices, and then but you don't need multiple. You don't need to go crazy on it, because all that's going to do is, like you said, it's going to provide extra equipment that can fail and have maintenance mad at you, and we don't like that. So we try to minimize equipment.
I would actually make one other argument of how we're different with things too, that we're all coaster people. We are always at parks, planning trips. Bill, I was speaking of, he's one of the top people in the world for coaster counts. I mean, he's well into the 3,000s.
Wow.
Many of us, take big trips and hit, bunches of parks at once overseas. We're constantly talking about coasters in our chat, sending pictures and videos to each other. Look how this is running. Look how that is running. And sometimes these conversations get really elaborate, going for hours, days, weeks, whatever. We love to ride rides. So not only do we work on them, but we're riding them during our non-working time, and we just know them. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, I love working with him on lift engagements, and he'll stay up in controls and I'll ride, and I'll be able to tell him, okay, let's try different things, and I'll tell you which one works the best, because I've been on a lot of roller coasters. I know the ones that are rough and the ones that are good. So that to me is our big difference, that we all are truly heavy users of the product that we work on, and you just get to know things at that point. You know what feels right and what doesn't. I really do think that's a big difference with us.
That does help a lot. I mean, because you could definitely tell, companies like yourself that have a ton of that experience that come in trying and doing stuff, and then other companies that might come in that they just, we do a lot of programming,
Right.
and we do a lot of repairs, and it's like,
Right.
okay, and you start talking with them and they're really not sure what you're talking about, but they're like, well, it's just equipment, we can deal with it, it's just equipment. And it's like, nah, it's got a little bit more personality than just equipment.
Exactly.
You have to throw the human side into it.
Mhm.
How are people trying to feel? How can you maximize the experience, minimize anything unpleasant? That's what we're always thinking of, and because we're riders,
Exactly.
we want it to be fun. We don't want it just to be functional. We want it to be fun.
Well, the other issue is, because we are really open and public with what we do, if there's something enthusiasts don't like, believe me, they let us know. And they will let us know. They will let us know until it's fixed. So we have that extra observing eye over what we're doing too.
And we'll hear about it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And I hear about, things from enthusiasts about things I have nothing control over. I don't like how these seats are on this coaster. Do something about it.
Yeah.
I really can't do anything about that. I don't know what to tell you.
Does electricity go through the seat? No.
Not on purpose.
Not
on purpose.
I can say something, but I didn't do that, but they get real mad at me. You had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Somehow they think we can change everything. Right. Sorry, guys. It's only control stuff. That's all we have control over.
Yeah, I get that. I get that a lot. People are just like, well, why don't they just? My pet peeve kind of is one of those, like, why don't they just tear that down and put something else in there? It's just like, it's not that easy. You're not floating that $20 million bill to put that in. Like, you're not doing that. Companies just don't go, yeah, let's just tear that thing down. And like, on the last video with Jen and Matt that was here, it's like we brought up the steel curtain roller coaster where they're having some sort of problems with that. None of my business, but the everyone was getting in the comments just going, why don't they just tear it down? It's like, it's only 5 years old. Why would you tear down a roller coaster that's only 5 years old? Like, oh my gosh, like, fix it. You invest some time into it. Something will happen, but not just tear it down.
Yeah.
No, they want something else there instead, so that's their excuse.
It's the immediate gratification that people look for. And, I understand from a patron side, you want to go to the park, you might have everything running, but we're looking at it from both sides in our area. And, sometimes that just simply happens where the design is not where it should be. There's no way to test these things ahead of time. You're talking about a large dynamic device that has to be built on site, tested on site, and any problems found are not going to be found until you are on site, and it can only be fixed on site. All those factors are not easy.
And on top of that, for all my viewers at home, this is how it goes when you build a roller coaster. You put everything together, and then once it goes over that lift hill the first time, everyone goes like this. Can we ride it yet?
Yep.
Why isn't it open? Can we ride it now? How about now? Like, they're just constantly looking at their watch saying, like, is it open? Why can't we ride it yet? Like,
Yeah.
And then you have the park sometimes and they're like, you guys are running it. Why don't we just, how fast can we go with this? Come on, we just put the cycles on it. We need it and open it up. It's like, don't want to rush things.
Well, we always tell people that our job actually begins on the first run.
Yeah.
That's when we really get hardcore into our side of work, is after that first run. Then we have to test all the functionality. We have to test all the errors. We have to literally test everything.
Yep.
And so, yes, we get that one a lot too. Aren't you done yet?
Yeah.
And especially because we have the mysterious black box that nobody knows what it does. It just, you push buttons and things magically move and everyone's happy. And then you push a button and things don't move and everyone is sad. And they all look at you and go, why are you making us sad? So that's the most input that we get from a lot of people. And yes, it's not as cut and dried as it might seem.
And all the devices have the mysterious factory smoke loaded into them too.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Keep that in there. Don't let that out.
Some people know what we're talking about. You can't let the factory smoke out of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that a handful of times too.
I'm sure everyone has.
Yep.
We had our SLC down and I was trying to move the train around in the station, but we didn't have enough guys to move because it took like 6 guys to move the train, push it back and forward. And it was just, the ride was down. So I had a guy on the radio and I'm in there with the motor contactors physically, there's a set of motor contactors there for the booster wheels. And they're like, we need to go forward. So I'm like, okay, they're spaced. It's forward, backward, forward, backward, forward. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, took my hands off. They come back and go, more. And they go, too much. A little bit more. And then I got cocky. Does that ever happen? Probably never happens to you guys. I got cocky. I'm just like, pow! I hit forward and backwards in the same contactor at the same time.
Oh, it had a sad then.
Yeah, I released the factory smoke out of the soft start on that one. That was, no more soft start left for that. Luckily we had a spare though, because that was completely my mistake. And the manager was, what happened? And I explained exactly what happened. I said, I did that. That was my fault completely. I got complacent on what I was doing and messed it up.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked at me and was like, is the ride running now? I was like, it's running now. Like, okay.
Most importantly, is it running and are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He never asked how I was okay or not.
In that order.
In that order.
This was before we knew the arc flash rating on stuff, so it was fine.
Yeah.
Are you guys responsible for doing arc flash ratings on your equipment?
Not usually to that level. What we do is SCCR ratings, which is basically your shock rating coming into the system.
Okay.
You want to have that up to a certain level. So for people that aren't familiar with it, if you get some sort of surge through your power system, if you don't have high enough shock rating, you can have devices that actually fuse together and allow that current to go past areas that you don't want it to go through. In particular, circuit breakers can fuse. And so instead of popping and protecting your equipment, all your equipment gets fried. So that SCCR rating is actually pretty important. And that's the shock ratings we're looking at. As far as arc flash, our view is a little bit more, don't do something stupid.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't stick hands on bare metal. That would be an extremely bad thing. And I would hope, I will put it this way, I would hope that any electrician working on any system is aware of the potential that system can have, even if it's a kiddie ride. I mean, 480 volts is 480 volts. It will make you sit down for a very long time. So, you gotta just be aware of those things. And I think that is more of that's part of the job for anyone electrical working on the system. So it's like, I don't think we need to tell them. I hope we don't need to tell them. You know, if we do need to tell them, then you're probably not in the right job.
Yeah.
Right. The arc flash that we had arc flash study done on everything. We had all the panels labeled, and I remember it was eye opening for us because, like, in our impulse coaster room, we had the drive was on one side of this room. It's a little hallway, and the PLC and the rest of the drive was on the other side. And we had a little computer sitting there. We'd sit down and we'd watch the net system and we'd watch the drive do stuff, and we'd be sitting there all the time, unbeknownst to us, because we just never thought about it. In the cabinet that was directly behind me, when I sit at the computer, like, I could literally put my hand behind it and touch, because the hallway was very narrow. It's like that cabinet had it was like 235 calories sitting inside there. Because it was 500 volts delta and Y brought into that cabinet at the same time from two different transformers. It had the full 13 kV feeding that guy. Like, there was a lot of energy inside of that. And like, after the arc flash study, it's like, I didn't even want to be around that room when the ride reset, you know?
You could feel it in the room.
Yeah, when you start realizing that electrical power can turn into physical explosions, and that's when, you know, there's a little bit of humbleness you always have to remind yourself to have on the job of, okay, I am dealing with some really dangerous stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, take the steps I'm supposed to take, because you get a little too lazy, and that's all it would take, you know. And you have to have the humility to go, this stuff can hurt.
Yeah.
Be careful.
And we all know somebody that did get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in any industry, almost anyone that has electrical controls, or whoever it be, I mean, yeah, you start talking about arc flashes, and pretty soon stories start coming out. It's like, yep, wear your PPE and be careful. Don't just assume it's going to be the same old thing every time, because it'll reach out and grab you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the serious part I was mentioning. You know, it is a very serious, sobering job at times.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's not fun, and we're all just, you know, there's some really serious, difficult times between what we do and just the job itself being very technical and very engrossing. But the fact that we do deal with human lives on the line, both, you know, the riders, the park employees, and us. It's not just people riding the ride. It's, you know, we have to mind our own P's and Q's that you don't get hurt, because there's a lot of things on a coaster site that will hurt you and kill you. You really have to be on your ball when you're out on those sites.
Yeah, try not to walk off of a platform.
Yeah, don't.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Fences are not up yet.
Yep.
You know, and it's you really just have to pay attention to the job that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, both on the electrical and, you know, just the general mechanical side.
I get questions from viewers from time to time, and I understand where their questions coming from, but like, they don't quite understand when I answer it, to say, well, when I talk about, you know, processors and things inside the rides getting old, and they say, well, why can't you just upgrade it? You know, it's like your phone. Why can't you just hit upgrade to the newest version? And it's, you know, to my experience, it's been like, well, you know, if you're running version whatever it is, if you're running 5.1 inside of a processor, and it's like, well, they're on version 7 now. It's like, you can upgrade that processor to version 7, but that program that's inside the processor wasn't designed for version 7, and it might do some funky stuff. Can someone elaborate on that a little bit? Because I just know that little bit, like, hey, you know, things aren't quite right inside of there. Like, what's some of the hazards that might be there if you tried to upgrade the processor without, like, doing like some sort of program comparison and really knowing the in-depth of what you're doing on something like that?
Well, the longer period of time that you're upgrading across, you know, if a difference between a 1 year upgrade of versions or a 10-year upgrade of versions. Yes, the whole purpose of these versions are to make changes, within. That's what the software people are doing, is they are making dynamic changes to the way that their programs that are running in the background from our software are working. We're assuming it's going to work in one way. Well, 10 versions down the road, it might not work in that same way. And you do not want to have a questionable function going on. The other thing, I think this might actually help your viewers in the future, is think of it like an iPhone. Can you use iPhone version 12 and 13 still? Sure. Can you use version 2? No way. At this point in time, you get to a point that the upgrades have so surpassed the hardware that the hardware itself has become obsolete. It's not just the software anymore. It's the hardware, and the manufacturers stop making that hardware. A processor's life might only be 10 to 20 years as far as what the manufacturer even does. And at that point in time, they go, we're not supporting this line anymore. Yes, you have a PLC 5 in your system. Well, that's funny because good luck at getting the parts for it, and there is actually like an eBay black market, for parts to get parts and everything like that, because these parts go obsolete physically. So it's not just a software upgrade that you have to be concerned about, but the hardware itself. Can it handle the new versions of software? And sometimes the answer is no at this point in time. So that's where, if you're looking at a long period upgrade, you're better off changing the hardware, because there are too many unknowns. And I mean, we have a safety system with people on it. The last thing I want to do is put unknowns into the system. So yes, those long-term version upgrades, it's not just software anymore that you're dealing with. There's actually hardware changes, so you can't just update the software and be fine. Just like you can't just update your iPhone version 2 to version 15. It's just not going to work. So it's the same with our stuff.
Along those lines, for the future, I mean, where things are changing every day, every week, every year, where do you think the controls for rides is going? I mean, we've always been using the same thing since it came out. We've always been using the, processors, and then the safety processor, and then the combined into like a guard logics type system. Is there something that you foresee on the horizon coming up in some sort of new like alternate method that's not really being used right now?
Good question.
There's certain aspects of it, yes. I know wireless has been a question. That has been a big question from time to time, and the reliability of it. I've actually even seen Bluetooth start to come up as a question. So communication methods actually have changed pretty significantly over the years. So yes, the idea of you have a processor, you have your software, no, that hasn't, changed. But even that, the safety PLCs that came about were a huge change to how we did things. So I would actually say, yes, there's a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of potential new things coming down the road, as far as communications, as far as, do we want to start networking rides across a very large network? But then you get to a security question, and so on and so on. There's points where you're always looking forward to what is the newest, latest technology. I want to be aware of it, but then you have to also look at it and go, but I have something that works right now. Do I take the chance of making that change or not? So we're always paying attention to what's new, what's coming down the road. Yeah. But yes, you do have to be careful on when you make those changes.
Do you have any more thoughts on that one, BP, too?
Yeah, I was just thinking a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now is you're getting a lot more advanced diagnostics internally to the processors, especially when it comes to like safety cards or safety input cards. When I say safety input cards, you have like a standard input card and then you have like a safety input card. The safety input cards are for stuff that's a higher performance level or a safety level that we need to ensure that it works every single time. They have a very high fault tolerance. The safety cards that we use now have a lot more diagnostic information and that come internally to them. They're able to detect their own faults. They're able to detect like short circuiting within your circuits. The safety output cards now will actually be able to tell if you don't have something connected to them, which was not something that we had previously. I think along those lines, you're going to see a lot more internal diagnostics and maybe external diagnostics to the system that will be advancing the technology even further. And of course, form factor is always a thing. Phones are getting, processors and things are getting smaller. You're able to fit a lot more stuff into a smaller area now. I mean, you look at those old PLC 5 racks and they're just like, they're huge and they weigh a ton. But now, like safety processors, you can fit them in the palm of your hand, and entire racks you can lift and carry on your own. They will only weigh a couple of pounds. So that type of advancement is nice to see as well. And I think we'll see more of that. I think you'll see more higher density I/O cards and I/O counts. You'll be able to fit a lot more into a smaller space.
As far as the programs running on the inside, I mean, obviously it's to the manufacturer that built it, it's going to be pretty much their program in there. But one thing I hear more and more of, not so much like it's coming in the ride business, but outside of the ride business, everyone's going to open source everything. Open source programs for all that stuff. And people ask me, they say, and I'm not a programmer, but they say, well, what do you think about could rides run open source? And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I don't think insurance would ever stand behind open source. I don't think engineers would stand behind it like somebody else controlling it. Like, no way.
I don't think so. We have the backing, not the backing is the right word or not, but we have functions that are built into the processor that are safety rated functions. There are an instruction that is safety rated, and we use those instructions because they are safety rated. I don't know what kind of guarantee, if that's the right word to use, with an open source project, that would you have the same guarantees or I'm trying to figure out the right word to use there, but whatever guarantee we have with using a safety instruction with a safety input card from a known manufacturer that puts these ratings on this equipment. If you use it this way with this type of equipment, these are the ratings, the safety ratings you will achieve. I don't know if you would get that with open source.
Okay. Along the safety lines, so it's kind of an odd question because I don't think most people think in this fashion or put it in this fashion, but you have the SIL level for a lot of processors and things like that. Like when you're designing a ride control system, almost the top of the box that you can go, or maybe the top that you can go, is an SIL 4, which is pretty heavy duties. But the question is are rides designed in that area, or do they stay in like a 3 or a 2? Because 4, honestly, when I looked at the definitions for it, 4 seemed like it was kind of overkill. But
4 would be overkill for a ride, because 4 is used for something like when I took my TUV certification, SIL 4 is like for like gas furnaces that if they were to malfunction would wipe out an entire city or a town or something like that. So we don't need that level of protection. SIL 3 is or a performance level E is what we, just about every single ride we will design it to that standard. Now there may be certain functions of the ride that don't have to reach that safety level, but most of the functions of the ride will have to reach a performance level E or a safety integrity level of 3. That's pretty much what we go with.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw in your email that you have that TUV certification.
Yeah.
And Brian, other Brian, Do you have a TUV certification down there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Sadly, I was going to take the course and work intruded.
Yeah, they always have times that are just the worst possible time.
Hey, right in the middle of your busy season, you can come take the course. I'm like, that doesn't help me. So
it's a week-long course and it is intense. So for us to be able to get away for a week during our busy season, which is typically when they have the classes, is difficult to do. And at the beginning of the class, they're like, hey, at the end of this class, you have a 4-hour exam to pass your certification. And I was like, 4 hours? It's not going to take me 4 hours to pass. Well, I'll tell you what, I was at 3 hours and 40 minutes and I was like, oh my God, I need to finish this. But luckily I did, and I passed. So,
congratulations.
It was tough. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It was, it is intense. So, I mean, I wish I had my booklet. I usually have my TUV booklet right next to me as I'm working, but I don't have it, but it's like a binder, like that thick. So, yeah.
Yeah, the last control system I did with our engineer, we would go out to lunches or dinners all the time while we were doing the factory acceptance testing. And he explained to me in detail what it took to get the TUV certification. So whenever I see that TUV certification on anybody's business card or email or whatever it is, it's like, truly, my hat's off. It's like, wow, that's incredible.
Slipping your instructor a couple hundies before the exam helps a little bit, but I'm just kidding.
For us, it's a very big deal to have BP have that certification. We're really proud of him to get that, and it's one of those things that having somebody on the team that has that, because that's another direction that the amusement industry is going, is the documentation side of it is becoming much larger, where we're doing failure analysis on paper. We're doing all the studies. We're doing all that, going through system calculations and all the fun stuff of being able to prove on paper, on top of things, that yes, everything is 100% correct the way it should be.
Yep.
And that's actually the bigger area that we're moving towards. So less programming, more paperwork. Oh boy.
And we'll start seeing that now. O'Brien will tell you that he's a member of the ASTM board, the F24 board. That it's going to become standard now that every new attraction will have to go through a formal risk analysis and failure mode analysis, and you'll have to have the paperwork to prove all that. So us being, having someone TUV certified and knowing how to do all that paperwork, and will give us a little bit of a head start once that becomes standard. When is that? Is that next year possibly on the books, Brian, for that to become formal?
Or is
that still debating?
Yeah. There's not like a specific rollout date for it. It's ongoing as we get all the nomenclature decided on and everyone agrees on how to word everything.
So at the amusement park I worked at, we didn't have any sort of central monitoring at all for the rides. Each ride was solo. It was siloed. It was standalone equipment. More and more parks are going, or some have been doing it for a while, but I mean, a lot of the other parks are starting to go to like a SCADA system where they can actually network the rides together, so that when a ride faults, like back at a central place, it will actually tell them that the ride is faulted and might even display what fault the ride is or what fault it is. So whenever I talked with engineers about this in the past, they were very, very hesitant about networking rides together, because the security became like, even though it wasn't directly into the processor a lot of times, no one had a good warm fuzzy feeling, as I say. Everyone was very nervous about it, but it seems to be happening a little more often. Is there an interface or something in there that is allowing, maybe can safely allow rides to get onto a SCADA network?
I haven't personally dealt with that, but I know there are systems out there that parks are using to do that. I don't know how we would interface with that. It would probably have to be something where we purposely sent information to either a server or another controller or something that was isolated from the ride portion that would just allow them to get the data that they needed, like, hey, the ride is up, or hey, the ride is down. And I don't have any firsthand experience, but that's what I would assume it would entail. Yeah, Brian, I don't know if we've done anything that's had a central, or where our ride had to talk to another system or another ride for maintenance or SCADA purposes.
There's been a couple. I believe Maury's has their system networked now, don't they?
If they do, I'm unaware of it. I haven't had, or they've never told me I've had to provide any extra data points or anything for them to access, whether or not the ride was operating.
Yeah, I don't think they do anything with that data. I think it's just purely to be able to get online.
I see.
With different things, because they have the unique IP addresses.
Yes, they do.
So they have a way that they can get online with each of them. I think, and this is a big question, because we actually have a friend of ours that is working towards this concept himself too. And the big question is going to be, how do you get the data from the PLC, especially ones that have been around for a while? They're, PLCs are closed devices. You would actually have to get in and program something. Well, nobody wants to touch something that's working, especially if it's not their stuff or whatever. How do you get in? And especially you've got PLCs that are 20 years old that are running things. PLCs like Westinghouse PLCs still exist on rides. The company doesn't exist, but the equipment is still running rides. How do you network all that data? We don't have an answer for it right now. And I think that is the big kind of holding point. If you're building a park from the ground up now,
that's what I was thinking.
You could do it.
Yeah.
Easily.
You can do it into the design. And in fact, when we were doing Universal, when we were doing Dueling Dragons, there was a plan to do all of that. I don't think that plan ever came to fruition, but at the time of design, we did design in the potential for them to be able to do that. So yes, it really is far easier if you're going to build something from the ground up now to do it than it would be to go back to an older park and try to network everything.
Right.
Makes sense. Speaking of like a Universal, a Disney, one of the things that comes to mind with those type of parks is lots of interaction with the ride itself. By that I mean, for animatronics, the show, you have the whole show aspect, which you don't normally have at a basic amusement park, like a local amusement park. So one of my questions becomes, was timing of a lot of that stuff off of the ride itself. So if I were doing that, I would say, well, we want this effect to go off when the vehicle passes here. I would say, well, you can't tie in with the ride system because that's we don't want to touch that. We don't want to possibly contaminate that at all. So what I would do is I would use either a mounted proximity sensor, or a lot of times if it's indoors, I would be fine with using an optical sensor, and just as it goes by the sensor, it triggers that. But the question is that when you work with systems for those type of companies, do they ask for like shared outputs? Like not only when it passes by this sensor does it tells the ride that it went by that sensor, but also just turns on a random output somewhere else to let a show system know that it went by?
Actually, I would say we do that more often than people would realize, even for smaller parks. What we use is dry contacts. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the concept, we're turning on a relay, and somebody else can run their own power signal through that relay without it directly connecting to our power supplies. So it's literally like a connection between two systems. And then we'll just trigger those relays at certain parts of the rides. We'll trigger it. One of the big ones is we use them for announcements in the station. When the train parks, we'll kick it in to do the exit spiel. When the lap bars lock, we kick it in for, the locking spiel. Open gates is another spiel. Dispatch can be another spiel. So we do that. Another example of even more, we had our themed ride at Kings Island, Mystic Timbers.
That was fun.
Which we had, about 15 different signals that went back and forth. And it for us, it's just, we work with the show people and say, okay, what do you want and when do you want it? And, we have that information. We can set up relays to do that. And we just do it that way. And then it is not a very hard thing to do.
I could expand on that a little bit too. For like Brian said, a lot of times it's just simple spiels and stuff, but like more advanced show control stuff. One ride that we helped out with, there was a whole separate show PLC that to keep everything kind of separated so that this is a very complicated ride and had a lot going on. And all we did was send data to this other PLC. And then the show controller company, they just looked at that PLC and saw the data that we were sending it. And they would take their information from that to trigger video and fire and all the other effects. Another ride that we did, they came in and put their own sensors on the ride. When I did Wildcats Revenge at Hershey Park, there was a company that came in that did all the really cool lighting for the lift hill and it lights up different parts of the structure. They came in and installed their own sensors, and when the train goes by and hits their sensors, it turns on their lights. When it hits our sensors, it turns on the brakes. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but the most common way is like how Brian said, we just give them 3 or 4 contact closures that close at whatever part of the ride, but then you have other ones that are more complicated, and we just send it to a separate PLC, and we just say, hey, what do you want? They say, I want to see all the proximity sensors on the ride. And I said, okay, here it all comes. It's in this array. This prox is at this bit. This prox is at this bit. This prox is at this bit. And they took that information and did all their timings based off of that.
Very cool. Very cool. I have to ask, what was your funnest project to work on? Like, what was something you had truly some fun with, if you could say it at all?
Answers on that one.
Yeah.
You go first.
Me first, huh?
Yeah.
All right. I will say it's hard to answer this question for multiple reasons. Sometimes the programming side will have fun elements to it and the ride itself that you'll really enjoy. Sometimes it's the location and the people. You get the right team together at the right time, or, oddly enough, the projects that are, you got your back against the wall, you have, very short amount of time to do it, but you have the right people there and you have a really good time doing it. So there's all kinds of like amazing experiences we've had. I always put it as experiences more than projects. But the one I always go back to is Dueling Dragons. That was very early on in my career. I remember when I first got hired, the first thing I did is I got to the office. I was the first person in the office. And this is when I was going to be working with B&M. And I'm just amazed at that point in time. I was geeking out to unbelievable levels. And so I walked in the office. The first thing I did is I pulled out the drawings for Hulk and Dueling Dragons and just stared at them. And I'm like, I get to work on this stuff now. And it got to when we were at Dragons, I was out there. I wasn't initially the programmer on it, but it seemed one night my boss was having a few issues with trying to get some communication working. And he said, why don't you give it a shot? So I sat down in the chair and I was able to figure it out, and I got going, and he looked at me and he went, well, you're in the programmer's chair. It's yours now. and that's how I got handed Dragons. And so it's like I remember, very specifically writing the dueling code and updating it, and then going out into the queue or out to the front just to watch the rides run and see how close they come to dueling, see if I need to make adjustments or anything. And it was just, that was amazing. I mean, seeing that whole park being built from the ground up, that's, those are just unique experiences.
All right, BP, your turn.
I hate this question. There's so many rides I had such a good time at. When I did Zadra at Energylandia for RMC, that was pretty cool because that was really my first international project. Was it? No, it wasn't my first international one, but it was my first time being in Poland, and the people there were so nice. Even though we had a bit of a language barrier, we were able to figure out what we needed. And I think this was more on like what Brian mentioned about the experience and the people you were with, because everyone there was just really cool. The ride was great. It's still, I think, my favorite RMC. And I had really good electricians, which made the job infinitely easier to handle. And it was just all around, and everything worked right out of the box. And I don't know if it was because of the people that were putting it together knew what they were doing, or it just was an easy project for me, and it worked well, and everyone was nice, and it was cool being in a new country where you could go to the gas station and have lunch for $1.50. So that was, we all went to the gas station for lunch. The gas stations in Poland are super awesome, by the way. You can get a hot dog like this big that's engulfed in bread for like $1.50, and everyone's breath smells really horrible afterwards, but it was a lot of fun.
So I think Costco.
No, trust me, it was not Costco. But it was that experience was it was very cool. I really liked that one.
That's awesome.
But I like all of them.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
It's really what I tell people is we have the secret cool job. I mean. Yeah. When I think back on the experiences I've had over the last 20 plus years of being involved in this, it blows my mind. Because, first and foremost, I'm a coaster person, as I think everybody in this group is. And we don't ever lose the feeling of awe when we get to do things that, if we think back to our younger selves, when we were just enthusiasts, what we think of it, we wouldn't even believe it. Then even down to meeting certain people that you knew were really big deals, and, you're being professional and everything, but on the inside, you're just, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting so-and-so or whatever. So we've all had these individual, just incredible experiences. And that's why I really only hire people that are really passionate, because I know they're going to appreciate that. If it's just a job, you don't want to work for us. I want to know that when you're going to your home park or when you're going to this new experience, it means something to you, because it means something to me and it means something to him. And nothing makes me happier than seeing my people also love their job and be really happy and enthusiastic what they do. I distinctly feel that. But for me, without a doubt, Steel Vengeance. Anybody that knows me knows that I live and die for Cedar Point. I have Cedar Point tattoos. I'm there at least once a week. It is home for me. It's the reason why I do everything that I do, without a doubt. And the biggest dream was, of course, to work there. And when we finally got Vengeance, it was just, I knew from that second on it was going to be truly a wild ride in general, because there were so many emotions involved. And I really tried to get myself as involved as possible with the experience. Things like, I turned on the power for the first time to the system, and knowing in that moment, this is it. I'm bringing this coaster to life. And I already knew it was going to be amazing, but here at my home park, here we go. This begins. And then they let me be first rider on it. And it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes, going over the top of that hill and looking out that park and remembering being, a young kid telling my dad, this is what I want to do with my life. And here I am, first rider on this incredible new ride that I put so much of myself into, designing the graphics for it, working with the employees, just everything I could do to get my hands on that and feel I was really part of it. I did. And I walked away with incredible memories. It was a very trying project because of weather. Fortunately,
It was really cold.
Good old
Really
Cedar Point weather
cold.
really was difficult with that. So it was, wasn't all fun and games all the time, but I've also made lifelong friends from that project, people I worked together with, and it was unbelievable. It was truly an unbelievable experience, and everything else from here on out is the cherry on top, without a doubt.
Yeah, I literally think it could be a completely separate podcast of us just telling stories of our favorite sites and things that have happened.
Yeah. There's multiple.
Yeah, that's why we say it's such a complex question. I'm like, I could spend the next several hours talking about just that myself, and I'm sure BP and have the same things.
Even just the funny stories too. I mean, just some of the stuff that's happened, just comments people make and random situations, and there's so many funny stories we have that will still, randomly bring up something. You remember that night at such and such, and we'll just, die laughing over it. So I really feel fortunate to do what we do. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I love the group that I'm surrounded with, and I really feel blessed to be in this situation. And I'm proud. I'm proud of everybody, proud of their work. It's an amazing experience. It never gets old.
And I think that's part of the gratification that comes with I would say, the industry in general. Because I've done stuff from overhauled rides to just a downtime call, reset rides, get back up and running, to full installations where brought something up from the ground up and got it working. And the gratification in this industry is absolutely unbelievable.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I know Brian Pastor was sharing his experience before we started the call.
Yeah, I was just basically saying about the best part of our jobs is usually when that first train comes back into the station. If you're still around for the day of the first, public rides, and you get to see the riders come back into the station and everyone's cheering and laughing and having a great time. Because I was saying to Ryan earlier that, for so many hours and so many weeks, we're just watching the ride go around with water dummies in it, and it's pretty, it's boring and there's not a lot of emotion to it, especially when you're doing your air checking and you're watching the ride go around for the 100th and 50th time and checking your pressure sensors and all this other stuff. And, it can get hard and long, and you're away from your family for a while. And then you finally see the one day when everyone gets to get on the ride and you get to see the reactions and all the hard work that you put into it, and all the smiles that you get to create. It really makes it worthwhile. It's really cool.
It's a weird feeling to leave. It really is a weird feeling to leave.
It is.
Project.
Yeah. It's like it is, and you hit the nail on the head there. And it like when you leave a good site or a site that you had a good time on, it's like it's tough. You feel like you're leaving some family behind, but you have. I always call it cutting the umbilical cord. Sometimes you gotta just let it go and step away. And because I'm like, when I say tweaker, I don't mean someone that's on drugs. I mean someone that likes to go in and I can sit there and maybe if I change the brake timing just a little bit more, it'll smooth it out, and it'll be a real nice and maybe if I change this just a little bit, it'll come in and park really nice and smooth, and we can maybe shave a couple seconds off the parking. And I could sit there and do that a ride for weeks if you let me to, but eventually you just have to be like, nope, it's good, it's done, it works right. You got to let it go now and let the people have their ride. And so
definitely some amazing feelings and everything else you get for this industry. I think it's unlike anything else anywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
I would agree completely.
Totally.
I know not everybody in our industry is in it because they love it to death. I mean, for some people, it's just a job or whatever. But when you meet up with other people in the industry that feel the same way, it's so cool because we always had different paths of how we got to where we are, but there's that shared love And that's why I love working with students too, because I get to find out, okay, where are the up and coming people that feel the same way as us? And I've watched students, just start as, oh, I'm just still in high school, I'm just still in college, and now they're moving up through the industry, and they still have that feeling of, I can't believe I get to do this. It just, one of my absolute favorite things is when I go to Cedar Point and I'm just walking around and I go, this is my world. Everyone else goes to the park for a day, talks about it for a while, goes home, doesn't think about it again until next year when it's time to go to the park. But every day in my life is this. And that's been my dream. And it feels amazing to just realize that every day is this. And I love it.
And every once in a while, it's like, oh God, every day is this.
I was waiting for that.
I mean, and I say that tongue in cheek, but there is no such thing as a job where you're not going to have those days.
That's true.
Okay, in all transparency, I'll give an example of that then. Generally around media day. I like media days, but you always get really tired at the end because they start, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and there's a lot of stress. For example, like with Vengeance, we got about 3 hours of sleep, got right back up and went again, and then we were there all day long. And those are the times where usually around like 11 o'clock or noon, sometimes it'll be, okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom or get something to drink or whatever. And you walk away and the fatigue hits you and the sound and it just scream and music and this and this and this. And you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I'm good. I've had enough magic for the day. I'd like to go home. And I can think of a couple times like that, but you get sleep and you're fine. It's not a lingering thing, but I've had my moments where it's like, oh man, why am I doing this again?
There have been times of actually sleep happening in the control room.
Yes. Oh yeah. Or just no sleep at all.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes a 7-day-a-week job. There's no time off. And when things are going to open, you got to go. Doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm tired, too bad.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to keep going.
I was relaying a similar experience. I was saying before the call started, it's like, yeah, for some reason, opening day and media day is really when the ride decides to screw up something.
Of course.
That's always when it is.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
I was saying that gratification that on opening day when people get off the ride and they're having so much fun, it's like, that is awesome, because a lot of times just 3 hours earlier, I was ready to quit. Like, I'm out of this place, and then 3 hours go by, I see people getting off. It's like, all right, let's keep going.
Yeah, totally.
You're not alone.
I think this has been great.
There's one thing I'd like to add to this, because this does come from being the side of being an enthusiast and trying to connect to other people that are, and bridge the gap between what we do and what enthusiasts think we do and what think is going on. And I've really tried to bridge that gap as much as I can, because I know this community really well. They're my people. I get it. And as more time goes on, I start to really figure out what goes wrong with people's perceptions of what we do and why we do it. For my biggest example would be, first off, we are in the business of simulated danger. Coaster people get that. The general public does not. And we've spent a lot of time explaining to people that you may feel like you're in a lot of danger. You may feel like you're going to get thrown out. You may feel all these things, but they are simulations. You're really feeling those feelings, but you're never actually in the danger that you perceive. Not everybody can get that. And so when people have that perception of danger, they project that on everybody else. This ride isn't safe. What are they thinking? Da, da, da. So I've spent a lot of time trying to explain to people, we want you to feel that way, but you are safe. We're not in the business of trying to hurt people or whatever. And you really have to argue that with people at times, because we do a really good job at what we do, good and bad of that. So that's the first thing that I like to talk about with what we do. The second thing is more on the enthusiast side, where people come after me about, why is this ride down? Why is this ride down? You know, either I know because it is something going on, or I don't know. It's a machine. Machines break down. It can be parts have run out of their lifespan. It could be you get a bad part out of the box. It could be, I mean, any number of things. It is a machine. And while it's great that there are so many fans and so many enthusiasts, some of them get real nasty about, well, this ride was down and da-da-da-da-da. We're not perfect. None of us are. You know, we are focused on safety first and foremost, but it is a giant machine, and machines break down. There's going to be times on any ride that it's going to need some downtime for any number of things. So I try to tell enthusiasts, remember that. You know, there's going to be times when rides are down because they're machines, parts wear out, parts need replacing, boards need replacing, any number of things. And there's a lot of emotions. People get really heated about, you know, why wasn't this ride up? Why is this ride delayed? We're not perfect. They're machines. We're all doing the best we can. But something being down isn't always indicative of a quality issue. It's a machine. Parts need replacing. Things need changed. So that's just one of the things I've really tried to talk to enthusiasts about.
Yeah, and if you ever get that where you say, you know, we're in the business of perceived danger. So one thing I've learned, I've come up with a method to talk people off the edge, and this has been a handful of people have contacted me saying like, hey, I want to go on this stuff, but I'm honestly scared. Like I'm too afraid to get on it. Like I go to the park with my friends and I see them get on it, but there's always something else that distracts that person. You know, they got to go to the bathroom. They got to do something like that.
Yeah.
And which I have no problem with. You know, that's just people's natural mindset. So I've learned to tell people, and I got some kids on rides doing this because I would explain this to people at the park too, that would wait off for, oh, their friends are going to go, but they were sitting at, I'm like, well, why aren't you going? You know, I'd just be sitting out there in the midway. Why aren't you going? And they'd start talking with me about it. And I say, watch that ride run. See all those trains running around there? All those people get on and they get off, and they get on and they get off every single day, every cycle. They get on, they get off. I'm like, when you get on that train, you're going to get off on the other end. Like, don't worry about it. It's safe. My kids go on it.
Yeah.
Like they love these rides.
Yeah.
And I've talked a handful of people into it. They're like, I took your advice. I went and I got on it knowing that I was just going to show up 2.5 minutes later back in the exact same spot. It's like,
yeah, it's
there
true.
you go.
It's true.
More
You're
dangerous driving to the park.
I was just going to say
Absolutely.
that. You're always in more danger driving to the park. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just kind of a side product of what we do. And the fact that when there is some sort of incident in our industry, it's very, very high profile. And every year, somewhere in like July or August, we get targeted. And the industry gets blown up, and something turns into, this is a sign that everything is bad, and da 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 da. It's literally the same cycle every year because, oh, it's July and August. The news is going to talk about parks now.
Yeah, because they're all in full swing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a side of me that, you know, I'd like to be super transparent about what we do to enthusiasts and general public because we want them to understand the safety side that goes into it. If you want to feel like you've accomplished something amazing by riding this ride, go for it. I mean, there's one of the reasons I love the really extreme rides is because I see the fear in people's faces when they get on, but I know when they get off, they're going to feel awesome about themselves because they conquered. I mean, how many shirts, you know, I conquered well, for them, it really was that. And that's such an ego boost. You know, people talk about that for weeks after, oh, I conquered the new ride or whatever. And I love that side of it, you know? So it's a balance though. Not everybody can understand that it's literally just, you're conquering your own fear. You're not conquering our evil plan to take everybody out.
I still don't know what it is about drop towers for me. The anxiety of getting to the top is just, I don't know what it is. I just like I went on in Southern California. I went on Lex Luthor's Drop of Doom,
Oh yeah.
and because I was there, and I'm like, yeah, this is it's one of the I don't know if it was at the time, but the world's tallest free fall ride at the time. I guess
It's pretty close now, I think.
pretty close, right?
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah.
But I swear I was gonna have like a heart attack from just the anxiety going up there.
You know what I'm
because one of the
thinking?
I never thought about the cable separators that they use because there's 3 sets of cable separators that goes up top, keep the cables from slapping. So they go through these guides, these separators that it goes up there. So when they programmed it, they said we're going to go up at whatever, it's max speed going up. And then right when it gets that cable separator, we're going to slow it down so it gently picks up the cable separator because it travels with the cab. And so going up, and it's going up, I'm like, okay, all right, here we go. And then it starts slowing down. I'm like, man, we're at the top already. And then it's like, speed back up again. I'm like, oh, now we're not at the top already. And then it starts slowing down. It's like, So I had 3 like false sense of like, we're at the top. And by the time I got to the top, I'm like, how much higher is this thing? Like, I was like afraid to look up. I'm like, I don't want to look up at this thing, see it going down. But then as soon as it released, I had such a fun time going back down.
Yeah.
And it was such an amazing feeling when I got off the ride. It's like, woo, yeah, that was great.
You
Going again, I'm like, pass. I'm good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was him
Hard
at
pass.
Stratosphere Tower. Okay. He didn't have a good night that night.
I got on
He was-
everything. I did ride everything.
I am completely unafraid of heights. I am far more afraid of the spiders at Cedar Point than I am of heights. And he is deathly afraid of heights. So I'm up there in the Stratosphere Tower. Absolutely just, I couldn't have cared less. Just to me, it was, oh, we're high up, whatever. He is white knuckling everything with he is just drained of color, white knuckling, barely talking, gasping. And I'm sitting there, wow, look how high up we are. Look how down there. And he's just.
Yeah. You're like, oh, look what's directly in front of us.
Yeah, look
And
at
all I
that.
can think of is, yeah, I would make a really nice red splat there. So, no, I'm not a fan of that much space between my backside and the ground. I've gotten used to coasters and climbing structures and stuff like that. But the structures, I don't know, when you're really kind of stuck
The
over
call
an
of the
edge,
abyss.
yes, and there's just that much open space. I'm like, nope, not me. I'm good. I'll make them work. I don't need to ride them.
There you go. I remember I went on the big shot at the top of the Stratosphere. And I was excited. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Let's go. And it was just shot up, and I was like, "Woo, this is fun!" Like, but as soon as the tower dropped out of my peripheral vision, as soon as that was like probably like halfway up that tower, instantly grabbed onto the handrails. I was like, "Woo, this is fun. This is high up, man! Oh my gosh, this is high."
The one thing that threw me about Stratosphere was the level of sway that's up there.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it makes sense, right? But I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that. And even the elevator ride up is disorienting.
Yeah.
So even though I'm not afraid of heights, it was a little bit like, okay, this is weird. I knew he was in deep trouble, though. I'm thinking, if I'm up here thinking, wow, this tower's swaying quite a bit, he's probably thinking it's going like this. So it was an interesting
Yes,
night.
it was a definite test for me.
Yes.
I have a question, Mr. Pastor.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything that's on your red flag list? Do you have a red flag list at all? Like,
For riding,
yeah.
I'll try anything once. I do have heights for me is weird. Like on roller coasters, no problem. You can take me 600-700 feet in the air if I'm on a ride.
Mhm.
It probably wouldn't bother me.
Me too.
If I had to stand up there and hold on to a staircase, that would probably freak me out a little bit. But there's nothing, I haven't seen anything that I wouldn't ride. Now that I'm getting older and in my late 40s, there's stuff I know I won't ride simply because I can't. Like I see things like the Mack Extreme Spinner coasters now, like the Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland or whatever it's called. I see that and I'm like, I would ride that once. I would probably feel miserable afterwards, and only because as I'm getting older, I can't spin as much. But
Yeah, me
again,
too.
the spinning for me is also weird because I can do tilt-a-whirls no problem because my son loves the tilt-a-whirl and we can do the tilt-a-whirl. My wife Jen can't. She sits those out, so she holds my purse for me. But like tilt-a-whirls, I'm okay. But the spinning coasters, I can do them. But like I did the one at Silver Dollar City, Time Traveler.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I rode that once and I was like, I am
Screwed
good.
you up.
No, thank you. I think I hit the vertical loop as I was going this way, and I was nope. Did it once. I was like, that's an amazing feat of engineering. I will watch and enjoy the engineering from this side of the coaster station. Thank you.
You could build a 10,000 foot tall coaster. I'd be let's go. I'll do it. But
Yep.
a tilt-a-whirl or Enterprise takes me out.
Yeah, for me,
Takes me right out.
the spinning is hit or miss with me. It's just weird. Like tilt-a-whirls, I'm good. Even like the normal spinning coasters, like the Morrisons and the Gertzlar ones, I'm fine on. But that time
Like
travel
the one at Knott's, though.
oh, that was funny. So, short story. So one of my shadows before I was officially hired, we went out to Knott's to look at a ride that they wanted a quote for. So we went to Knott's to look at the ride, and we rode Sierra Sidewinder, and
Yeah. It was like no spinning coaster ever spun as fast as
so
like
Brian,
revolutions.
if you're familiar with the ride, the seats face outward. It's a train of, I think, 4 cars, and the seats all face outward. So you can see the people in the other coach. And I think, Annan, did you ride with me? Were we in the same one? Okay, so we were in the same car, and Brian was in another one. But his was off-weighted because I think he didn't have anyone sitting next to him, right? Was that what happened? And I swear to God, that thing spun so darn fast during that ride. I was laughing hysterically. And was it, maybe there was someone sitting with Brian. Anyway, but we pulled into the brake run, and I think someone said, I've never seen that ride spin that much before.
I mean, it was just,
we were just
it was about to take off.
It was so funny.
It was hilarious. And BP are looking at you like, we're not really good with spinning stuff. We're like, so we get stuck with the one that's like literally going like an F5 around the track.
And I was fine on that, but it was just hysterical. It was just so fast. And I was like, I don't know what the heck happened.
I know. You mentioned the Harry Potter ride. I knew it was going to be an iffy shot for me. Being a Harry Potter fan, I had to do it. And I knew the trick of you focus on one thing in front of you. It's the mission space trick. You know, you focus on it's a whole other story. You focus on one thing in front of you, you don't look around, and it helps you not get sick. So I did that the best I could, a big smile on my face. What a great ride. The second I got off, it felt like I was on a really fast moving conveyor belt. So I followed that conveyor belt in my brain straight into the bathroom, and I visited with Moaning Myrtle for an hour. And I've not been on that ride since. It's a great ride, super cool, but
Mission Space was the same for me. I went during, because at the time I was a cast member.
That must have
so I got to do it during cast member Fuse, and at the time there was no non-spinning side. It was all, everything spun. And I think at the time the launch sequence was, I think since the opening they shortened the launch sequence a bit.
Oh, did they?
So I think there's less spinning. And I remember about halfway. First of all, I'm claustrophobic, so when that panel came in like this, I was like, "Oh, good Lord, we are in for it." And I stared straight ahead. They have the cold air blowing on you, and halfway through the ride, I said, "This cannot end soon enough." And I was okay. I got off the ride, but the same thing like what happened to you. I got off the ride. I went straight to my car. And as soon as I sat down in my car, I was like, I am going to cover my dashboard and vomit. This is awful. What the heck? So, and that's one I've ridden I think I've maybe ridden it once or twice since then, but I can only do the non-spinning on that. And even so, I don't like it because that claustrophobia. Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That is
we rode the heck out of it during the pass holder soft opening year. And I
God
was no
bless her.
problem. And then all of a sudden I crossed the line and like, no, it was like something in my body changed and said,
Mm.
no more mission space. Stay away
Yeah.
from it.
Mm-mm.
I've ridden Mission Space a handful of times. I am a little claustrophobic, and like we said, when everything comes back, it's like I wasn't sure how it was going to do the first time. So I'm like, okay, we'll just, it's fine. It's fine. Everyone's doing this. It's no problem. And that comes back. I'm like, all right, what's this do? What the? And then after like a couple of minutes, I'm like, there was a ride. I was pushing all these buttons and everything was flashing. It was awesome. One of the first supervisors I worked with, I was doing something out of ride as he was training me, and I did something on the panel. I touched something, and he looked at me and went, I'm like, what? And he goes, you're a button pusher. That's what you are. You're a button pusher. Yeah. I'm like, and he's like, you can't just push buttons. You got. So I'm like, yeah, I'm a button pusher. The look on his face, like I just killed someone. You can't just push buttons on panels.
Yeah,
there's so many buttons and they're flashing. I like it.
Yeah.
That's great. Brian, anything last to add? Want to?
Okay, I've got one for you guys. This is a little bit on the topic earlier where we talked about, the amusement industry always gets attacked around July or so. There's always some article about how dangerous rides are, et cetera, et cetera. Stopping on the lift.
Yes.
Stopping on the lift.
Bane of our existence.
Is
glitches.
It broke down on the
yes,
lift.
it broke
Glitch.
down
The
on
computer
the lift.
glitch.
The computer glitch.
Oh, I get absolutely incendiary on the word glitch. I'm like, do you know how much programming has gone into making sure that checkpoint, which there is a lift checkpoint, if you want to, if you're sitting in the front seat, look ahead, you'll see the proxies that are near the crown of the lift. It's literally called the park position. And that is the checkpoint to see, is the blocks clear? Are your brakes closed? Is everything okay? Before we're going to send you going, 80 plus miles an hour down a hill, we want to make sure everything's okay. So we have a final checkpoint. If not everything matches up the way that we want, you're going to stop at that checkpoint. By design. Slowed down, stopped, exactly by design, and it's not dangerous in any way, shape, or form. But gosh, that one drives me nuts. There's always a news article. There's a train stopped on the lift. I'm sitting there going, good. I would rather it do that than stop in the same location that there's another train.
There was one on Magnum last year that turned into international news on TikTok with all these people freaking out. It's literally, it stopped on the lift. And I just thought, is it a slow news day or what? Because it's literally stopped on the lift, but they portrayed it as it broke down and people were stuck and did it. That went on for months.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that stupid video going on for months. So, yeah, it ties back to that whole perceived simulated danger thing. But, man, that persistence of it's stuck on the lift. It broke down on the lift. It's timeless.
Oh, yeah.
You can't seem to get rid of it.
That one just keeps coming around. Keeps coming around the bend every year or every couple of years. Somebody at some news place will get a picture of a train stopped on the lift, and here we go again. Maybe
there should be signs in the queues that literally say, this isn't what it is.
Well, then you're assuming people read signs in the park again.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, bane of our existence.
Yep. So that's the last thing I had is just please understand that.
Please. And spread the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
My personal sanity, please understand that.
Yeah.
That's I mean, Well, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I have the majority of people coming to my channel that they do, is because most of the time when people go off and like, oh, this is crazy, I'm sitting here going, no, actually,
That's not.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of my channel got its content from last year when Fury 325 cracked. I actually made my video off of that from everyone else, like this and that, and it's like, oh, we hope the families are okay, and it's just like, what? What happened? And I started looking into it. I'm like,
of the column that broke this column.
Yeah, I was like, what? What? So I was just like, yeah, okay. Granted, this doesn't happen every day, but people weren't really in like extreme danger or anything like that.
Yeah. I guarantee you the people on the ride had no idea.
No idea. Not any at all.
Nope.
And the thing is, to anyone else watching, these things are so overly engineered. It's designed for something like that to happen. It's okay. Steel, just like, we talk about all the electrical stuff that can break or whatever, steel can crack.
Things have to be
inspected. And then it gets welded and it gets fixed and everything is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're just not the big deals that people think they are.
Yeah. My analogy for that one was basically all the supports in the area are to ensure the coaster lasts a very, very long time. You can remove the majority of supports out of everything. It is still perfectly safe. Yeah. It just doesn't have like a 30, 40, 50-year lifespan at that. You fatigue the metal faster. So they put more supports in so the metal's less fatigued.
No, for sure. There's actually a ride that we worked on that's down today, and I got a message about it. Why is it down? Why is it down? So I messaged some friends at the park it's at, and they said, oh, that they just found some areas that they wanted. It's a wooden coaster. There's some areas that they wanted to fix. They wanted to replace boards. Great. They inspected it. They found something that needs replacing, so the ride's not running and it's being replaced. But of course, everyone comes to me, what's wrong with it? Nothing. The board ran its life expectancy and they're replacing it. And it's being inspected constantly to find that. So it's the ecosystem is working correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to leave wood uninspected. That doesn't end well a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely, you gotta really keep an eye on the woodies, that's for sure. But parks do,
And for people at home, that's not death and danger there. That's if you don't inspect your wooden coasters properly, they tear themselves up faster. It tears up everything. It tears up more wood, even more wood on top of that, and then it starts tearing up your train.
Yeah.
You're still safe. You just shorten the lifespan of a lot of stuff in that train.
For sure. Mm-hmm. I wrote an article for Ace about the story of steel engines, just everything that went into it, everything. And one of the things that the park talked about is how the carpenters were so meticulous with Mean Streak. That's the big reason they were able to convert Vengeance, is because that structure was in such perfect condition still, being that old. But that just goes to the diligence that goes into maintaining even something of that size. Picture, if you don't know, if someone's watching doesn't know the ride, it's a huge coaster structure. When it was built, it was the tallest and fastest and steepest in the world. So it's huge. But it was that meticulously cared for. Decades down the road, they were able to convert it, no problem. And that just shows you the care that goes into it.
Again, thank you very much for my special guest being on. I do appreciate it. And as always, stay off the air gates. Bye.